Have you ever wondered where the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment and acted from that place? Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your host, Brian Berneman, who believes that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world. We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers. From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world. Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Brian Berneman, your host, and I have the pleasure to be joined all the way from Leeds, Yorkshire in the UK by Russell Harvey. Thank you so much, Russell, for being here, for taking the time for this conversation that, there's a lot of topics that we're going to explore around resilience and life in general. Yes. Before we get into that, I would love it if you can share to everyone that is watching and listening to us a little bit more about you.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. Thanks very much, Brian. It's great to be here. And thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. So I suppose a little bit about me. So yes, I'm in Leeds. I'm in Yorkshire. Some people say God's own country. So, if you've never been to Yorkshire, you must come and find out about it and go to the Yorkshire Dales. It's an amazing place. So a bit about me. I think I have always been interested in human behavior. I've always been interested in how come humans do the things they do and don't do the things they do. That's just always fascinated me. And then as I was growing up, because apparently, people seem to like my people skills. They said to me, well, maybe when you grow up, you should either be in personnel, which is like human resources, or in sales. And both of those are just immediately made me go, oh, God, no, thank you. Ironically, I am under the banner of personnel, human resources. That is ultimately where my career went. And I did have a sales job when I came back from traveling around the world. And how the birthplace of the resilience coach came about was actually when my wife and I were traveling around the world many, many years ago, and I was teaching in Hong Kong, and something magical was happening in the room. And at the time, I didn't know what it was, but I just thought there's something magic that's happening here. I want to do this for a living, but I didn't want to be a teacher in a school. And then when I came back to the UK, it was like, I think I want to be a trainer. That was the title of it at the time. And recruitment agencies will sort of say, well, what do you know and what you qualified in around training? And I went, well, nothing at this moment in time. But that's what formed my career. So after having done a sales job, then I went into training, then learning and development, then coaching. And my last permanent role was at an organization called the Co-op. And there are cooperatives all around the world, and there's a Co-op in the UK. And not long after I joined, it was in serious trouble as a business. And actually all of my internal clients, I was a leadership coach, literally came to me with their head in their hands and said, what the hell are we going to do? And I said, well, there's this word resilience, and there's an acronym called VUCA, VUCA. And I went, our solutions are all in there. And when I left the Co-op, knowing that I was going to set up by myself, it was like, what am I? Who am I? Actually, I am the resilience coach. All I've been talking about for the last few years is this word resilience. So how to lead yourself and others really well in a full-on crazy, volatile, uncertain world is my specialism. So that's the short version of me for right now. And hopefully we'll discover a little bit more as we go along.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. I often find it interesting how we, in our own journeys of life, like we go through different things and we start to sometimes stumble upon things, realize things, or, things that perhaps didn't exist before. I was talking the other week with some of my students at university about, life purpose. And it's like, some people have an inkling of what they like to do, what they want to do, like career-wise or things like that. Some people have no idea, like even until they die of old age. And it's like, One of the things that I told him was, like, don't put so much pressure into finding your purpose, because it can be that it unfolds through whatever it is that you're doing on your life. And perhaps you will find it, perhaps you won't, perhaps it will change, perhaps, like how to allow that. And I think that's part of the resilience piece as well, of understanding, how to navigate that.
It is, and it's so interesting because specifically one of the dimensions of being resilient is, it's a statement of resilient people have a purpose. And for all those that are listening, watching now, it's not for them to suddenly be worried to go, well, I haven't got a purpose. I'm one of those that just seems to be going through life and I haven't got a purpose. That's okay. It's sort of like, it's a bit of a trust me moment, but if you ever had the opportunity to talk about it more, I suspect those people that feel that they are drifting through life, actually, there is an underlying guide. Their value system is taking them through. And actually, if you really reflected upon it, they could see actually that there's some commonality and thread that's about it. And, it's a question I ask a lot of people about what's your purpose. And as a leadership coach, I sort of say, so what's your leadership purpose? And it's just a fascinating conversation. Some of them are immediately going, yeah, it's this, I know it. And others are like, I haven't got a clue. I don't even know where to start. Who on earth am I? Oh God, you've stumped me. But in all of those instances, there's opportunity to either go, yeah, this is my purpose, and others go, I think I'll discover it then. I think I'll have a go. Let's create one. Oh, okay. So I do have a purpose. So it really is really interesting. It's one of the dimensions of being resilient, of having a purpose, but there's multiple ways in which you can articulate it and discover it.
Yeah. And one of the things that I have found through the years is as well how many of the people that I worked with, their purpose a lot of times is tied to career instead of just like things that perhaps are not how they make money. And, like someone, perhaps their purpose is to be, as you're saying, something with values, being a kind person. And that is their purpose. And that is, like has nothing to do with their work or with their career. And for some people it is. Like some people perhaps, when I was a kid, like since I was 4 years old, I thought, like, I want to be a journalist. That was the thing that I wanted to be. And when I worked as a journalist, after some years, I'm like, actually, this is not for me. And then I changed. And I was like, well, like, we'll see. Like, amazing skills that I got doing that. And then it's like, well, let's figure out something else. And I think that this is part of them being able to navigate life and to surf through all of the circumstances, is that even that purpose, or asking ourselves those questions, what are my values? What is my purpose? It's a reflection that we can continually do. It's not a fixed thing that we do it once and that's it.
No, absolutely. There's a couple of things here. There's one about this word money that I just want to come back to, and only if this is useful for people. So my purpose, because I realized that I wanted to be a resilience role model, so it's like, well, I have to have one. And it absolutely did start some years ago with literally, I want to help people. That's what it did. And then in the last number of years, it's quite specific in the fact that by the year 2025, I want to positively affect 100,000 people. And right now I'm up to about 76,312-ish. And it that just came about because that evolved from, I believe in supporting human beings to be at their best. I'm in learning and development, so the people side of a business was being the core. And then it was like, I want to help people, and then others would sort of go, yeah, but that doesn't sound like a purpose. So it became numbers to it, because some people sort of said, well, you've got to make it SMART, Russell, SMART. And I'm like, yeah, I suppose I do. Yeah. And I've got it to the stage now where it motivates me. It inspires me to be able to achieve the 100,000 by the year 2025. And it'll be 2025 soon. So I'll have to have a new one, which I realized the other day and went, oh, No, okay, gonna have to get a new one at some stage. But that gets me out of bed each day. It supports me to about the decisions I make. I have to look after myself and be in a good place to be able to achieve the purpose. It has to be the approach that I make. So it's about which clients I say yes to and no to. Because if I can't positively affect in this space, I've got to say no to it, essentially. So it's just that's just an example of like I have one, there's mine. People listening right now, if that helps you in some way. And then part of this as well is it's an absolutely fascinating conversation I've had so many times around this word money. So when I will, as a facilitator, coach and go, so people aren't motivated by money. Anybody that's listening now is going to have a variation of a reaction to that. And then I say, so we need money in certain circumstances. There'll also be others sort of going, well, no, actually, I can survive without it, but predominantly we need it. The way our global society has been going has been giving us the messages that money is the be all and end all in a vast amount of time. And that gets some people really into a pickle, about I have got to chase money and that'll make me happy. And I haven't really yet found somebody that has been happy by money. And even if somebody literally has a monthly wage and takes the money out of the bank and has a pile of cash in their living room and they watch that instead of watching the TV, they're still not motivated by money. They're motivated by watching what the pile of cash gives them, essentially, inside themselves. So those just were a couple of things that were far off in my head around purpose. And you mentioned about the money piece. Yeah, that's what was just going off in my head.
No, and I think that this is one of the things that I find it in that conversation, as you're saying, with how it is our society mostly nowadays, and how we've been conditioned to chase that money, to work and just to work for money, to be able to accumulate, or however that is, that there's a difference between understanding money will give us happiness, and there's a space of survival that it's like,
Yes.
if you don't have that enough money, then the focusing on money is really important, because we're in survival mode. And for those of us that we're privileged
Absolutely.
to not be on survival mode, then
Yes.
we realize money is not going to bring me happiness. It is part of enabling my life and whatever makes me happy. It's not the goal. It's just medium to allow that to happen. Yet I have enough. So I can say,
Totally.
like that.
Yeah, and absolutely. In terms of me saying not motivated by money, it is the fact that we need it. So those that are, we can go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's been around for an awfully long period of time. Yeah, it's relevant. We are also all day, every day. We are in terms of evolution and cave people. It's literally I there are some things I need right now to continue to live. So absolutely, that is the element, and it's not me preaching to like anybody listening to go, yeah, I've got very little money. It's go, yeah, I know you need to find some more. Absolutely, you've got to find some more right now. Fingers crossed, when you've found enough of a little bit more, you can start to get to the next bit, essentially.
Yeah. And I would love to know a little bit, Russell, just as we are talking about resilience, and we touched on a few different things like purpose and money, and you mentioned already a couple of models that I want to explore a little bit in depth. Before we get there, what is your definition of resilience, or how would
Yeah,
you talk about resilience?
absolutely. So I always define it as springing forward with learning. Springing forward with learning. So when you role model that, you ultimately shift away from persistently surviving and coping, and you get to this lovely word of thrive. Okay. So I appreciate it's a play on words when I talk about springing forward, but I'm just personally not a fan of this term bounce back. Because part of being resilient as well is also recovery from adverse events. But what I hear an awful lot of the time is that when people have, faced into a challenging event, they'll go, right, I'll now bounce back. And it literally is this subconscious instruction to your brain to go back to how you were before. And I'm going, yeah, what have you learnt? What have you realized from this experience? For the resilient people, to role model springing forward learning, they get into the habit of pausing and reflecting and learning. And learning is hard, and learning about what it is that they've done in their recent times that worked really well for them. Strengths-based approach, what worked well for me in recent times? What did I learn about myself? What inner strengths did I, able to tap into and utilize? And actually, behaviorally, what are the things that I am going to stop doing because they didn't work well for me? So to be able to achieve springing forward with learning, you need to get into the habit of pausing, reflecting, re-energizing and recuperating. But it's the spring forward with learning that I'd like people that are listening and watching to really remember and go, okay, what does that mean for me? And a key component, as well as a purpose of resilience, is the word adaptability. So these are words that are thrown around. So the adaptability is the openness to change. So there's some good research that shows that people that spend a third of their time engaging with being open to change, learning, then they get into thrive. So if you really want to if you want to break the cycle of coping and surviving and you shift into thrive, then it's the spring forward with learning and adaptability is how to do it, essentially. And that's what I work with my clients on.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, because a lot of times I think that there is some, different ways that we've been conditioned, or that we think of even things like resilience, as you're saying. Majority of people is the bounce back. I like the word adaptability. I usually use the word navigate, just to be able to navigate things, and I work a lot with the nervous system. So it's an understanding on how do we get to a place of self-regulation? How do we get to a place of understanding? How do we navigate and surf the waves of life? Because there's going to be different things taking place, and how can we start to, as you're saying, notice with that pause, with that reflection? How can we notice so that we understand what do we need to unlearn? What do we need to incorporate? What are the ways that I, Brian, or you, or anybody actually operates? Because when we understand our tendencies, it's easier to actually say, oh, I have a tendency to do that, and that is not supporting me at this moment. What are the changes that I need to incorporate to be able to actually go towards that thriving? As you're saying, that's bringing forward with this new understanding that is how we actually create different habits, different beliefs, different patterns of behavior, or even just different ways of choosing how to be any single moment.
Absolutely. Different ways of choosing is fantastic, because that goes to the heart of resilience, which is about attitude. So being able to buy into, believe, accept that we always have a choice in any particular moment is at the heart of resilience. About what's my attitude towards this, my attitude towards the changes I need to do. It's like, where are you on that sentence? Are you going, my attitude towards the sentence of like, I've got choices is anything ranging from no, I don't, all the way to, yeah, brilliant, I've got loads. I'm excited about the number of ones I can choose, and that they're on a scale in any particular moment in time. So it's all interlinked, essentially, all these different aspects.
Yes.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Yes, my brain likes connections. So sometimes I look for them where they aren't, but actually in the resilience space, because it's about the human condition, there's an awful lot of interconnections that we can do.
Yeah, and I often find in my own experience and all of these years of working with resilience, even if that's not like how I talk about it a lot of times, it's understanding everything is connected. And how do we create meaning out of things? How do we open ourselves to different perspectives? How do we open ourselves to change? Because that is, as For me, I learned the only constant in life is change. And
Yes.
we are the ones that are, in a sense, trying to prevent it because we are, like we are creatures of habit and we like the known. So it's easier for us to be like, no, I like to stay here. I don't want to change. And perfectly okay, because that's also a way for us to survive, to feel safe, to feel comfortable. And also, how can we allow that?
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's probably an opportunity in there because you said the sentence of change is constant. It's probably a real apt moment to bring in the acronym of VUCA because that's one of the reasons why I like it as an approach and a model. Because, I have facilitated, hundreds of workshops around change, and it is the fact that there is a sentence that's been said, hundreds of thousands, millions of times of change is constant. Okay. And then the VUCA piece for me is a really great way of articulating that differently and enabling people to find multiple ways of actually being able to understand what that genuinely means. So if people aren't familiar with the VUCA term, it's been around for some time. It's got military history to it as a model, and it got brought into the business world in about the 1990s. And I just enjoy it for how much sort of delving behind a lot of the words you can utilize. So I'm going to say a load of business buzzwords now in terms of what VUCA is, but just bear with us, okay? So for a better way of saying change is constant, think about the fact that VUCA, and I'll say this twice because there's VUCA and VUCA prime to counteract it. So the world we live in is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So I appreciate there's 4 words, and fingers crossed, I've not had anybody yet that's turn around and go, no, I don't know what you're on about, Russell. It's not literally, as you were just doing there, nodding away. Every single time so far they've ever said this to a room of people, they've just been going, yeah, it is. Yeah, you're right. It is completely. And go, okay, so it's always going to be like that in some way, shape, or form. Okay. So it is about accepting that with good grace. Then to counteract it, rather than just saying, the world is mad, deal with it. You sort of say, okay, so how we now face into volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous is we need vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. 4 more business buzzwords, okay? However, each of those 8 has got a bit of a description behind them about what it means. So the understanding one, I just highlight. So this is about we need to understand as humans and leaders, we have to understand that we need to feel comfortable feeling uncomfortable, which goes all the way back to that you said, we are hardwired as human beings to just keep ourselves safe. Our brain is literally going, do not go outside of the cave because cave is scary, because it's scary outside. So doing change, going outside the cave, doing something difficult, we have to understand that at times we're going to have to feel comfortable, feeling uncomfortable. And then it's about our overall levels of resilience and our strengths-based approach that can support us best in those moments, essentially to go, I'm prepared to have this feeling of being uncomfortable, but actually I'm now going to do something with it. I'm going to face into it. I'm going to engage with it. I understand the approach that I'm going to take with it. And there are like leadership capabilities and peak performance skills that are behind all of these 8 words as well. So it's just a fact for me, it's a really great way to actually explain, get people to wrap their heads and hearts around. So change is constant. Right. Let's look at all of these 8 words, look at the meanings behind each one, get a bit of understanding about actually the behaviors that are required in each space. And, okay, so my resilience is going to support me in this. These skills, these capabilities, they're all going to support me in this as well. Okay, so change is constant. And actually, I feel far better about that sentence now.
Yeah. And, I think that a lot of times when, as you're saying, for some people, it's like too many words and this jargon of all of these acronyms. They sometimes are really helpful because they can give us some framework. And not every framework is going to be beneficial for everyone. There's frameworks that are going to resonate with us and frameworks that are not. And at the same time, what are the meanings, as you're saying, of each of those words for each of us, and how are we living those? There's something that I often say to people, and that is that, well, what does feeling uncomfortable mean? Because feeling uncomfortable is just a construct. All that we're doing is we're just feeling. And that's another way of understanding that. And, I was talking with someone the other time about, instead of perhaps going outside of your comfort zone, which, as we've been talking, there's a survival component there to feel safe. So what if instead of stepping outside of the comfort zone, we expand the comfort zone so that we have more space, more capability, more room for growing and developing and changing without having to potentially going to a place that we don't feel safe. So different people, depending on our life path, depending on the trauma that we've been through, depending on our, childhood or circumstances, stepping completely outside of the comfort zone might be super scary. So, how can I expand that? How can I allow that? So, this is, as well as part of the resiliences, we're all different. We're all needing something different, and we all need to experience it in our own way to, as I was taught, to be the leader of your own life so that then we can lead others.
Absolutely. And I have found one of the best ways to expand your comfort zone is the whole strengths-based approach. So I use a psychometric called Strength Scope. There are 24 strengths that have been identified, and you would do a psychometric and you identify your significant 7. So genuinely understanding what your significant 7 out of these 24 are, because you cannot be naturally highly energized by all 24. Sorry, there are a significant 7 of them, and you might have some bubbling under strengths as well. But how you harness and expand your comfort zone is actually, in any particular difficult, challenging situation, is even more important for you to go, how can I bring my strengths into play right now? Because those are the things that naturally enter me. How can I tap into that strength there is the one that is going to be really useful for me right now. And I'd normally go to that strength, but no, actually, do you know what? I'm just going to dial that down a bit, because this strength is going to be far more useful to me in this moment in time. That's most definitely a way in which you can expand your comfort zone.
Mm. And, continuing with that, I think that, and I'd love to get your experience and your take on this, is for teams, organizations, when they are going through challenges or they need to adapt or change, as you're saying, there's a lot of unknown, there's a lot of constant change in the world, and businesses, organizations, just as people, need to adapt, need to change. Like, there is, as you're saying, there is power and understanding as well in what your team's capabilities are, what are their strengths, and how to actually meet them, so that there's an understanding on how does the business or the organization decide to move forward. Whereas a lot of times there is, in my experience at least, there is a top-down approach of like, well, this is what we're going to do, instead of understanding what can we do based on who's here.
Yeah, there's absolutely, there's so much in there. So resilient people equals resilient organizations, in my humble opinion. And what I've found is that the vast majority of the time, when consultancy firms, people that talk about a resilient organization, they predominantly talk about how you survive a cyber attack, how you make your processes more flexible. And I'm always the one that's going, yeah, I understand that there's an importance to that. And what if we also just started to go, resilient people equals resilient organizations? And it always creates a good conversation. There's still a massive more progress, I think, that we could do around all of that. So yeah, completely. Any line manager that exists anywhere, and that's from chairperson to CEO. They're a line manager, all the way from somebody that is just is the first time they're line managing somebody, and they've got a team of people that report into them. It's just absolutely, how clear is it to you what energizes you naturally in the workplace, and how clear is it to you that the people who are reporting to you what naturally energizes them? Okay, and what are you doing day by day to harness that? It's literally going, so this work needs doing, these KPIs, these tasks, this stuff needs doing, and you've got these human beings. How well are you meshing those two together around their natural strengths? And so that's going to build a naturally resilient team. And yet there's loads as well about really understanding what leadership style to take in any particular moment. So sometimes it is correct to be top down, and sometimes it is not. Sometimes it is correct to be devolved decision making, to go, actually, the people that are doing the role, they're the ones that know the answers. I now need to enable and empower. And the more senior you are in the organization, and this sort of the leadership, training that happens globally, we do too much essentially of making people believe that one size fits all. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of different leadership styles, and I'm part of my company's part of an organization called the Oxford Review, who does research on all leadership and human behavior and organizational development things, and says good research, bad research, whatever. So they're doing a big project at the minute on leadership styles and validity, and so it's absolutely what's coming through is, we can have transformational leadership, we can have servant leadership, we could have emotionally intelligent leadership, we could have autocratic, we could have devolved. But the real golden nugget is to understand when to do each particular leadership style, for what reasons. And when you're in a VUCA world, that decision has to be made a lot of the time, multiple times in a month or 6 months or in a year, to go, that shifted. Right. We just leadership style. There's this one. Leadership style. There's this one. And so that's challenging for a leader, because I've suddenly sort of said, if you've been on a course and sort of says, this is the leadership style you need to make, it's like, sometimes, not necessarily all of the time.
And as you're saying, depending as well on your team. Because if your team needs, needs someone to, as you're saying, needs someone to motivate them and to keep them accountable all of the time, then even if that's not the style that you were told, it's like, well, that's what your actual people need. And it's about adapting with the needs of the actual people, and not with the theory of how this would be the most appropriate thing. And I think that is a lot of times the understanding, as you're saying, it's not definitely one size fits all. This is why I keep on telling a lot of times to some businesses, when I'm being approached and I'm talking to the people that might decide to hire my services, it's, well, I cannot give you like a program that is the same for everyone. I need to actually understand your business, your team, your people, so that then I can understand what's the approach that I need to take to facilitate, so that you get actually benefit from this, and not just like cool, like we did this course, we understand this, and it's like, but it doesn't really help us.
No, I know. And it is really fascinating talking about exactly that with just so many, peers and colleagues over the decades, right? And it's just all the time. It's like people asking for off the shelf stuff. We need a course on this. And, I will do it. But at the same time, sometimes it's a case I'm doing this because I'm hoping that I can create enough of a conversation going to go, this isn't enough. We've done this and we've realized we need something else. Actually, we need to change the conversation we're having with you. And then sometimes you sort of go, I just know, even if you just want to do a tick box exercise, so we'll leave it because it's just not going to get you anywhere, and it's still fascinating. It's been around for a long time, but I'm trying to find a better way to be able to have those conversations with prospective clients around, there's some different questions you need to be asking me for you to understand what it is that you need,
Mm.
essentially.
Yeah. And I think that, there is a benefit on certain basics. That is
Yeah.
that, okay, yeah, like this can be the same for everyone, and that is the starting point, with the knowing that that's not actually going to serve you in this specific circumstance with what your business is at the moment. And I think that the same. It's like I usually every year I go to university, and I have a new group of students, and it's like, well, I'm teaching the same curriculum. It's always different based on the students that I have, because they might
Yes.
have a different understanding. Some of the things they already know, some of the things they have no idea about, some of the things they don't understand how to incorporate them, and some of the other things they do. So, I need to every semester adapt to the needs of my students, and not just being like, well, the curriculum says I am going to say A, B, and C, so that's all that I'm going to say.
Yeah. I had a brilliant experience just this last week, and it's a session I facilitated probably sort of thousands of times around coaching skills. And it was the first time that actually all of the delegates were in varying levels of hearing impaired. So I had two sign language support, and actually one individual was both hearing and visual impaired. So I had just single delegates occasionally over the last 20 years that had some level of sort of hearing impairment, but this was specifically this is how they described themselves. They're a charity that are deaf women that support deaf women in the community. That's who they are. And so it was just an extra layer of me adapting, an extra layer of me feeling a little bit nervous, an extra layer of things that I'd thought about for decades and said, and actually checking, oh, how is this translating? And we had some fascinating little cyber moments between myself and the interpreters, where they clicked what I was trying to say and going, yeah, actually, so that's not going to work in sign language. We would translate it like this, and that's not the point that you're trying to make. So we would have just a conversation to go, right. We've got the point you're trying to make, Russell. So how are we going to do this in sign language like this? And that was just really intriguing and curious to me. I felt a little bit sad as well. It's like 20 years, and that's the first time that all the delegates were hearing impaired. I don't know what that means, but it was like that was just another sort of sidebar reflection that I had,
Mm.
hoping it will open up more opportunities to do that again.
Mm.
And sounds a bit egotistical, but actually at the end of it, one delegate came right at the end and said, best training I've ever had. So at the same time, even though I was a little bit worried about it, it's like, well, there you go. What are you worried about, Russell? It's like you adapted, it worked, they loved it.
Mm.
All right.
Beautiful. It's interesting. I used to many years ago now. I used to do a lot of translations from
Yes.
English to Spanish, or well, different things. And I remember one of the things that you just mentioned about the importance of the person that is interpreting or translating, the importance of them actually getting,
Yeah.
really understanding what it is that you're trying to convey. Because I realized I was working once, and we were translating some books, and, and because it was a lot, like we actually hired someone to translate one of the books, and when I got it back to proofread it, I'm like, this doesn't make sense. They don't understand what this actually is about. They translated it kind of like, verbatim. It makes sense.
Yes. Yes.
The essence of it wasn't there. So I had to, like go back to it and actually do a lot of translation. And it was the same in moments, like sometimes my teacher, like we were doing live workshops, and I would translate, like real time. And it was,
Yes.
I can do it because I understand what he's saying. If I was just,
Yes.
like a translator that was hired to do that, oof, that would have been challenging.
Yeah. But and what was really good is I had the opportunity to talk to the interpreters. before we ran the session. And it was really interesting that they sort of said, we don't get to do this very often, as in, just literally, we just turn up all day to situations and, that are having to react into the moment of like what it is that we're being asked to do. And some of it was really fascinating. Some of it was a bit scary. And yeah, so when the three of us had a conversation beforehand, they were just going, so was I going, this is brilliant. We're having this conversation. I get the session. I understand it. I know what I'm going to turn up to. I'm looking forward to coming to do it because yes, I know what my role is. And so, yeah, just that 1 hour contributed to the session running really well.
Yeah, beautiful. Russell, I'm aware of our time. I would love for you to share, with everyone that is listening, if there's one thing that you wish everybody knew, especially around resilience, perhaps it's something that you already mentioned, or perhaps it's something that is new in the conversation. What would that piece of advice or suggestion be?
So it's the word optimism. That's what I'm going. I really like people to understand the nuance between and the difference between optimism and positivity. I'm a little bit concerned that we're in a world where we can flip into toxic positivity. Resilient people are optimistic. Now, there's a route to get there. So if you look up the dictionary definition of optimism, it includes the word positive to describe it. So they're heavily intertwined. And this is something that you have to achieve to be able to spring forward with learning as well. So optimism is grounded in reality. Okay. And it can be difficult and challenging and hard to have quality conversations which are discussing the challenging reality of a situation. It's like if you're sitting there as a team and you go, I don't want to talk about this because I don't want to face the size and the scale of the horribleness of the problem. I don't want to lift that stone up. I don't want to ask that question because I'm frightened of the answer. So it does require, a level of resilience in the team to have the quality conversation to go, please, can we discuss the reality of the situation that we're in, how we think about it, how we feel about it. So grounded in reality. And that takes effort and energy to do so. Then the next thing you do, and you can't necessarily do all this in one go, the next thing you do is then you add in the strengths-based approach to go, okay, we've understood the reality of the situation. So now let's think about what's my individual strengths as the leader or whoever's leading the conversation. What's my individual strengths, skills, capabilities, experiences, attitude, mindset, behaviors that I've got? What's the ones that everybody around me has got? The collective strengths, skills, capabilities, attitude, and let's get them all on a table and out there. And when you do that, you more than likely get genuine feelings of hope, real hope to go, okay, the size and the scale of this challenge or the reality is it's not feeling so awful. Actually, I'm hopeful that with my strengths and skills and everybody else's, we can find a way through this. We can find a path through this. Oh, I'm starting to feel positive about this. So the route to positivity is to think about how can I get optimistic about this? Or if you're a leader of a team, it's like, how optimistic are we feeling about this situation? And if it's like, no, we're not. Okay, right. We need to have that conversation around it. So role modeling, leading a team that is, and creating the culture of optimistic, I think is far helpful. And I just want to avoid people falling into the trap of, yeah, this situation is horrible. You've just got to be positive. Can we move away from that, please? I find that unhelpful to be in that mindset. So optimism is what I would like everybody to sort of really focus on, essentially.
Beautiful. I really, really appreciate that, because a lot of times, as you're saying, like positivity can be toxic and can be completely ungrounded from reality. And it's a way of avoiding things instead of looking at things to be able to actually be with them, which is how we become resilient. So if we are
Totally.
not looking at things, we cannot reflect, we cannot learn, we cannot spring forward. So that is beautifully said. Russell, before we wrap up this conversation, if people are resonating with you, what you're sharing, where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the resilience coach, put that into what is known as the internet, then that's where you'll find us. So that's what my website is, .co.uk, all social media, LinkedIn, the resilience coach. That's how you'll find me. And there's ways of just getting in touch through there.
Beautiful. And for everybody watching or listening, you can find those links easily on the show notes so that if you're interested in learning more about Russell and his work, you can go and check that out. Thank you, Russell, for this
Thank you, Brian.
conversation. Thank you for bringing this into the world, which, we need more of this. So thank you.
We do.
Thank you for your time as well. And for everybody listening, thank you for being here if you're still listening to us now. What did you learn in this conversation? What actually resonated with you? What are you incorporating already into your life? Have you explored these models? Have you done these reflections? Just leave us a comment anywhere that you're finding these conversations, just to keep that going. So thank you, Russell, once more. And thank you, everyone,
really enjoyed it.
for
Thank you.
listening. Yeah, awesome. Talk to you soon, Russell. And yeah, have a beautiful rest of your evening over there.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using #ConsciousAction and tagging @ConsciousActionNZ so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.